this year.
You know
Amazing.
What? It's a new year, man. And I'm going to turn it over to you with 4 seconds.
All right, Tucker, thank you from the swamp in D.C. Welcome to Hannity. Like a false prophet of moral righteousness, James Comey, former FBI director, constantly pretending to be a courageous hero fighting for truth and justice. In reality, he is a hateful, vengeful, arrogant narcissist we now know who abused power and fostered one of the most corrupt federal departments this country has ever seen. But tonight, we can report the walls are closing in on James Comey. We have yet another major development in our Hannity watch on the deep state. Former FBI General Counsel James Baker, the man who served as Jim Comey's top lawyer, he, too, like others, is now under criminal investigation for leaking to the media, and Baker has long-faced scrutiny over his ties to Mother Jones reporter David Corn. Remember, Corn was the first journalist to report the existence of Christopher Steele's dirty dossier in the lead-up to the 2016 presidential election. So let's keep track of Comey's leadership at the FBI. You know, Mr. Integrity. Okay, now, of course, we know Comey himself was fired by President Trump. His second-in-command, Andrew McCabe, was fired for lying. Andrew McCabe is now currently under a criminal investigation. Comey's top investigator, Peter Strzok, well, he was fired for his obvious political bias. He may soon be under criminal investigation, as well as his ex-girlfriend, top FBI lawyer Lisa Page. She was forced to resign over her bias. Then you got Comey's chief of staff, James Rubicki. He's resigned. And now we know Comey's general counsel, Jim Baker. Now we can report under an official criminal investigation, something Comey himself that he admitted to doing when he leaked the FBI memos about President Trump, remember, to his professor friend at Columbia, and then to the New York Times, for the very purpose of spurring a special counsel investigation, which coincidentally, well, that's being carried out by Comey's close friend, Robert Mueller. How nice. So what did all the people I just list have in common? They all wanted Hillary Clinton to win, one of them 100 million to 0. They all hated and continue to hate Donald Trump. They all worked together to rig our political system and fix the outcome of the 2016 election by using their powerful top positions, not rank and file, the top positions, the FBI and the DOJ, to help Hillary Clinton win, to cheat, to rig an election. And as we now know, they had an insurance policy and a media leak strategy in case Clinton didn't win, 100 million to 0. Now, after James Comey was fired, top officials inside the FBI, they were angry. They acted out of that anger, malice, emotion, without any evidence, no probable cause or reasonable suspicion, and ended up launching what was a partisan investigation into the president of the United States with a wild conspiracy accusing the president of working with Vladimir Putin to fire Comey because Russia told him to do it. No evidence. They were angry. This was their punishment. This was their payback, abusing power to attack the president that they never want elected. Now, this brings us tonight to a Hannity history lesson. Glenn Greenwald recently pointed out that the FBI, in their investigation into Donald Trump, used eerily similar tactics to those pioneered by J. Edgar Hoover. Remember, Hoover served as an FBI director for many decades, and he became infamous for his aggressive investigations into Americans who he suspected had ties to the Soviet Union. Hoover even suspected FDR's vice president, Henry Wallace, to a lengthy probe and surveillance simply because Hoover disagreed with Wallace's policy. The FBI should never be in the business of investigating political differences or policy decisions. They shouldn't be, well, lashing out because of personal opinions that they have. The role of the FBI, which is the 99% of field agents and rank and file, they do their job. They investigate crimes and criminals, not politics, not policy, and especially not launching a counterintelligence investigation into a duly elected president with zero evidence because you don't like him. Now, today, William Barr, President Trump's pick to be our next attorney general, faced his first day of confirmation hearings on the Hill. Senator Lindsey Graham, who'll join us later, grilled him about whether or not he would investigate the FBI's baseless, corrupt investigation into President Trump taken out of anger for the firing of Comey. Let's take a look.
So we should always be on guard about the politician interfering in an investigation, but we should also have oversight of how the department works and those with this tremendous power use that power. Are you familiar with the January 11th New York Times article about FBI open inquiry into whether Trump was secretly working on behalf of Russians?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Would you promise me and this committee to look into this and tell us whether or not, in the appropriate way, a counterintelligence investigation was opened up by somebody at the FBI/Department of Justice against President Trump?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think there are a number of investigations, as I understand it, going on in the department.
Have you ever heard of such a thing in all the time you've been associated with the Department of Justice?
I have never heard of that.
Are there rules about how you can do counterintelligence investigations?
I believe there are, Mr. Chairman.
So if you want to open up one against the president, are there any checks and balances?
Not outside the FBI.
Okay, well, we need to look at that. In terms of people who are actually enforcing the law, don't we want to make sure they don't have an agenda?
That's right, Mr. Chairman.
Do you promise me as Attorney General, if you get this job, to look in to see what happened in 2016?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So that's a good sign that William Barr cares about equal justice, equal application of our laws, and saying that he will serve as a fair Attorney General. Mr. Barr, there are no shortage of corrupt Trump haters to investigate, and many with a lot of power that they have abused. No shortage of crimes here. And tonight we're going to begin to lay out a roadmap of corruption for the new Attorney General to be. Our own Greg Jarrett has compiled a comprehensive list. We're going to start, we're not going to go through the full list tonight, with FISA abuse. That is lying to a FISA court. That is committing a fraud against a court to get a warrant to spy on a Trump campaign associate using Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for phony dossier that was full of Russian lies. Look at your screen. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Rod Rosenstein all likely committed fraud on a FISA court by presenting Hillary Clinton's dirty dossier as unbiased, verified evidence, when reality, it was never verified, never corroborated, and full of Russian lies, and they never told the courts that it was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. Next up, Mr. Barr, if you get this job, you need to look into the theft and the leaking of government documents. Now, Jim Comey obviously committed a serious crime when he intentionally leaked his FBI memos about his conversations with the president. It's important to also look at abuse of power charges. That would be many of the same names: Comey, McCabe, Strzok, all fired. Lisa Page, resigned in shame. Bruce Ord, demoted twice, should have been fired. All using their high positions in our federal government to persecute those they disagreed with politically. All trying to help Hillary Clinton get elected, and then having an insurance policy and a media leak strategy if, in fact, Donald Trump did win. And let's not forget about lying to the FBI. After all, this crime shouldn't only apply to an American war hero like General Flynn and Trump campaign staff like George Papadopoulos, who had to spend 2 weeks in jail for nothing. Andrew McCabe was literally fired over that charge. Is he going to receive the same treatment as General Flynn and be prosecuted? Now, the DOJ also will need to tackle the unauthorized leaks. We now know that James Baker is already facing a criminal investigation tonight over this charge, but so too are we going to look at John Brennan and James Clapper? And what about Susan Rice? And what about Samantha Power? Should they not be investigated over the massive amounts of names that they unmasked while serving in the final year of the Obama administration? And because of James Comey's biased and inept investigation of Hillary Clinton, an exoneration before an investigation, obvious violation of the Espionage Act, Mr. Barr must also revisit Hillary Clinton's various crimes, like, deleting subpoenaed emails and deleting your hard drive and washing it with bleach pit and busting up devices and ripping out SIM cards. Now, we will show you exactly how Mr. Barr should tackle that in tomorrow night's monologue. But first, let's get back to Barr's testimony on Capitol Hill earlier today. In a concerning statement, he actually said that the Mueller investigation is not a witch hunt. I strongly disagree. Take a look.
You say you've known Mueller a long time. Would you say you have a close relationship with Mr. Mueller?
I would say we were good friends.
Would you say that you understand him to be a fair-minded person?
Absolutely.
Do you trust him to be fair to the president and the country as a whole?
Yes.
When his report comes to you, will you share it with us as much as possible?
Consistent with the regulations and the law, yes.
Do you believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
Now, maybe we can assume Barr is just trying to placate Democratic fears, giving the benefit of the doubt, not rushing to judgment, a belief in innocence before being proven guilty, because we know, in fact, Robert Mueller is on a witch hunt. You need look no further than the people that Mueller hired. We're talking about multiple big-time Democratic donors, those that made tens of thousands of dollars combined in contributions to the campaigns of Obama, Kerry, Clinton, and other Democrats. Mueller, he hired 0 Republicans, not one. Top Mueller attorney, Jeannie Ray, actually worked for Hillary Clinton. How could you hire Hillary Clinton's attorney at the Clinton Foundation? And Mueller's so-called pit bull, according to the New York Times, Andrew Weissman, well, he actually attended Hillary's election night party. And Weissman has also come under fire for his hyper-aggressive prosecution tactics, like withholding, if you read Sidney Powell's License to Lie, withholding exculpatory evidence, including one case, Anderson Accounting. They were forced to close their doors. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs before the Supreme Court overturned Weissman's prosecution 9-0. In another case, Mueller's pit bull, Weissman, sent 4 innocent Merrill Lynch executives to prison for a year. You'll never get that year back in your life before that case was overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So we're supposed to believe that that track record appointing those people, that's a fair, unbiased investigation that's being carried out by an obvious, aggressive, partisan team of lawyers that Mueller picked. Don't forget, he also picked Strzok and Page. We know where they stand. And we're going to continue to monitor all the latest developments surrounding the deep state throughout the show tonight. But first, we turn to our Hannity watch on the government shutdown. So today, President Trump invited Democrats to the White House. He's trying to make a deal. He's offering them every opportunity, invited them for lunch and a meeting to discuss border security. That invitation, once again, rejected by, oh, I'll give you $1, Nancy Pelosi and company, making it all the more difficult for the president to negotiate with a group of people. How do you negotiate when they won't come to the table to talk? And this comes as a new migrant caravan is on the move now tonight in Honduras. According to a human rights group that's traveling with the migrants, the caravan has now swelled to approximately 2,000 individuals, raising fresh fears and concerns about more clashes as they move into the southern border of Mexico. And then, of course, back up to the United States. Without a doubt, this is good for everybody on both sides of our border if we had physical barriers. And remember, a wall makes everybody safe. We don't want to encourage the journey, which is literally difficult. People die, which is subject to human trafficking, physical abuse, sexual abuse, other life-threatening conditions for those that want to come here just for a better life. And I've said many times, I think that's the vast majority of people. They want a better life for themselves, their kids, their grandkids. But we've got to have a system where we vet anyone and everyone trying to come into our country. We have had Americans that have lost their lives because of illegal immigrants. 90% of the drugs, heroin, for example, coming into this country come from our southern border. That makes it a life and death matter, not a political ploy. And maybe Democrats should take note, because the president's agenda has been extremely successful. We've got good news on the economic front tonight. German automaker Volkswagen announced they're expanding operations in Tennessee. That's good news. Following the big news, the president tweeted out, Volkswagen will be spending $800 million in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they will be making electric cars. Congratulations to Chattanooga and Tennessee. A job well done, a big win. And it gets better. A new poll finding that over 7 in 10 investors see economic fundamentals as strong and long-term optimism remaining high. Democrats threaten to destroy all that optimism with their far-left nanny state socialist dreams, like Democratic Mayor of New York, Comrade Bill de Blasio. He's actually pushing a new plan to confiscate, that's right, confiscate private property from landlords. Those he claims create unlivable conditions. And he's even saying wealth is in the wrong hands of people in New York. Well, that sounds like he wants to confiscate money from some people and redistribute it to other people. Now, his coastal comrades out in California, they're now pushing their own radical far-left agenda with another nanny state proposal to ban paper receipts because paper is filled with, quote, toxins. So America better wake up. Socialism is on the rise, in the move, and taking over the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, unemployment is at a record low for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workforce. Consumer confidence remains high. Wage growth is the best it has been in a decade. But Democrats threatening to turn back all this progress, higher taxes, burdensome regulation, and of course, they don't want any energy independence. Some want even a 70 or 80% tax rate, socialized medicine, government-mandated climate shaming, all while making our nation less safe, less secure, because they want to fire ICE and want open borders. They want to control your business. They want to control your decisions. They want all the power, and they want all your money. How does that make your life better? Here with reaction to all of this tonight, the author of the #1 bestseller, The Russia Hoax, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, along with former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Good to see you both. This list of crimes.
Yeah.
We watched William Barr today. There's some things he said that made me say, uh-oh. But he can't, for example, say, I support lock her up.
Right.
So, as I noticed on social media, a lot of people were upset about that.
But he was shocked, he said, at the text messages. He was dismayed over the FISA abuse that was recounted by the chairman. Bruce Orr and his wife's involvement in the dossier. And finally, you know, the counterintelligence investigation by the FBI with no legal standards, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, simply because they could. The arrogance and audacity of the FBI to do this was really quite breathtaking, and you could tell from William Barr's response. So he's got his work cut out for him, Sean.
You put out a list of specific people, specific crimes.
Right.
You and I could never understand why Jeff Sessions never followed up and applied the law as it's written. We're not asking, that's all we're asking
because
for.
he wasn't really the attorney general. The de facto attorney general was Rod Rosenstein. And he was angry at Trump for getting blamed for writing the recommendation that Comey be fired. So he's the one who tried to recruit cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment to depose the president. He's the one who appointed the special counsel. So when you have the guy in charge of the FBI, which was Rosenstein, in bed with his subordinates who were going after Trump, why, of course there can be no justice.
All right, Pam Bondi, it's the first time I think we introduced you as former Attorney General of Florida.
Weird, right? Sad.
Welcome to your new life. Look, in that position, you watched the testimony today. Are you confident that Mr. Barr will apply the law to all of these serious examples of abuse of power and corruption that we have spent a lot of time exposing on this show?
Sean, I wrote an op-ed that was published about why William Barr is the best selection in the country to be our U.S. Attorney General, and now I'm even more convinced than ever. He said the right things today. He was honest. He was genuine. And he will go into it with an open mind. But this is a tough man, and he is going to do what's right. I have no doubt in my mind, actually. I think he's still the
Does that
best
mean Hillary
choice for
Clinton,
USAG.
who obstructed justice and violated the Espionage Act, will be held accountable? All the people that committed fraud on a FISA court, are they going to be held accountable?
I believe so. He is a career prosecutor. He is an attorney general, and he is going to put right above wrong. He's going to do the right thing. I have no doubt in my mind he is going to look into all that, just like they tried to attack our president of the United States.
And do you think that, will he do it himself, or will he appoint a special counsel? What would you advise him to do?
He has no, I would advise him to do it himself. This man has no reason to recuse himself. There's not even a perception here. No, absolutely not. He should not recuse himself.
I agree with Pam. He should do it himself. There are great career prosecutors who are perfectly capable. There's no conflict of interest here, which is required, by the way,
based on the evidence we know and the names we mentioned in our monologue tonight. Will they go to jail?
Yes,
well, I think a grand jury should investigate and make the determination whether they should be prosecuted if convicted. Of course, they should go.
Would I be prosecuted?
You would have been prosecuted long ago, and so would I.
And thanks to all the great men and women in the trenches every day in the FBI, who these few people are making look horrible, and they are doing a great job every day. The thousands of men and women.
The rank and file FBI are so angry at what these top officials did, and they should not be grouped with them either. All right, thank you both. When we come back, exclusive interview, former House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes, Lindsey Graham, when we get back, straight ahead. Right now, as Senate lawmakers grill the AG nominee William Barr, we're learning more about the deep state and the abuses he'll be confronting when confirmed. For example, according to reporting from our own Catherine Herridge, former top FBI lawyer James Baker, this is under Comey, is the subject now of a criminal investigation into illegal leaks to the media. And there's also growing evidence of the deep anti-Trump bias among senior FBI officials. Now, with Devin Nunes from the House Intel Committee revealing that the Bureau's leaders, quote, had no real evidence against the Trump team, but launched an investigation anyway following the Comey firing. Joining us now with reaction is the congressman himself, Congressman Devin Nunes. Congressman, when I hear that, what I'm hearing is that is a revenge investigation, but it had already gone on for 9 months. Immediately after they exonerated Hillary with no investigation, they launched the so-called Trump-Russia collusion investigation. 9 months into it, Comey's fired, but we learned from Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, McCabe himself, and Comey that they had nothing at that point. Why would they then sit in a room and basically say, well, maybe the president conspired with Putin to fire James Comey?
So, Sean, let's think about it a different way. So we have these supposed Russia hawks sitting over at the counterintelligence division at the FBI and DOJ. Where were they in 2012 when Barack Obama got caught on a hot mic telling the Russian leader at the time he needed more time and to wait till after the election? It looks like that was trying to work with the Russians. Where were they investigating when the Ukrainians were begging the United States for weapons? The Congress was trying to give weapons to the Ukrainians after the Russians had invaded and annexed Crimea. Nobody went to investigate the Obama White House or President Obama. So you have no evidence in this case. You have no records, no phone calls, absolutely nothing of any sort. And yet you supposedly or reportedly are investigating the president. And furthermore, supposedly this scope memo that outlines whatever Mueller's supposed to be looking at, if the New York Times story is to be believed from last Friday night, a Friday night news dump, if that's to be believed, then that means that somebody leaked pieces of that scope memo to the New York Times. And we still have yet to see it here in the Congress.
Well, John Huber's supposed to be investigating that. He's been working a long time. We could use an update. I don't know if you've seen this piece in the Epic Times. The headline is McCabe's FBI tried to re-engage Christopher Steele after Comey was fired, and they have a transcript supposedly by Bruce Orr showing the FBI went back to Steele between Comey's firing and Mueller's appointment. Now, we also know that there was communication. Bruce Orr was the conduit, if you will, for Christopher Steele, and he was trying to get his information. Remember, he's been discredited. The dossier has been discredited. He was fired for lying and leaking from the FBI, but yet he's still in contact with all these top officials and trying to feed information to Mueller, which we got in the exchanges with Bruce Orr.
So remember how we got here. So we set up a task force. We gave a list to, at the end of the last Congress, or actually last summer, a task force was created to conduct a bunch of interviews. What supposedly now is leaking out are pieces of these interviews that Chairman Gowdy and Chairman Goodlatte had asked for the FBI and DOJ to release them. They sat on them. Now I think what's happening is people are selectively leaking pieces of this. So I read the story in the Epic Times. I have not read all the transcripts, so I don't know if that is true or not, but obviously it's very alarming if it's true that in that time period that they were already trying to go back to Steele and get him to come back after they knew he was terminated for lying and misleading the FBI. Very, very concerning, and I think we need to know more about this, which is why these transcripts from all these interviews need to be released.
We got to hope that the new Attorney General gets into this deeply.
I agree with you.
All right. Congressman Nunes, thank you very much. All right, joining us now with much more, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is with us. He was, of course, leading these hearings with William Barr today. Senator, good to see you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much.
Your thoughts on the hearings? Let's just start there. And will Bill Barr do the things that Jeff Sessions did not do, and that is the deep state, that's Hillary Clinton, and all the people we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I believe so. I've seen no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russians, but I've seen a lot of corruption in the Department of Justice and the FBI. I have every confidence that Mr. Barr is going to ask questions. How can you certify to the FISA court on 4 separate occasions that you have enough evidence to get a warrant against an American citizen when the evidence, the dossier, is unverified to this day? I think he's going to look long and hard at the Department of Justice and the FBI and the way they conducted the Clinton investigation and the way they started up the Mueller investigation. Here's long story short. Mr. Barr believes that politicians should not interfere in criminal investigations, but he also believes that criminal investigators should not be out to get politicians, and they were out to get Trump.
There are a lot of forces working against them, but, for example, I know if I deleted emails, acid wash the hard drive, I'd go to jail. Are you confident he will do that? Because every other American, I guess if you're being investigated and subpoenaed your emails, you can erase them? Is that what Hillary has taught us? Because I believe that's breaking the law.
Well, here's what I hope. I hope you go back and look at why she got away with this. They were out to get Trump. They say so themselves, and they're out to help her. So I want him to do more than Mr. Horowitz did, explain to the country how it got so bad. I want him to tell us what happened with the FISA warrant application process. How could it get so off base? If there was a counterintelligence investigation of the President of the United States, I want him to tell us how it started, who started it. I want him to clean up this mess. I'm not expecting him to throw Mueller over, but I am expecting him to clean up the mess at the Department of Justice and FBI, and I think the president picked the right guy to do it.
Well, I think we now know for a fact that Russian lies were used to purposely rig, and also an investigation into Hillary was rigged.
Paid for by the Democratic Party.
It was a favored candidate over another candidate.
Yeah.
All right, and an insurance policy and a leak strategy if that failed. All right, let me move to the issue of immigration. Okay. I think the president, I don't really care which way he gets it, because lives are at stake. We have 90% of heroin coming into this country from our southern border, human trafficking, et cetera. The president decides a national emergency is needed, that's fine. You've been talking to people and you have a different approach. What is it?
Well, I think he needs to build this wall because we need the wall. I think Democrats are being hypocritical because they all voted for more wall funding than the president's asking for. So there's 2 ways to build a wall, Sean. Do it by yourself through executive action, which is the last resort but may be necessary. The other option is to get a legislative solution. Nancy Pelosi has said, I'll give you $1 for the wall and that's it. I believe there are Democrats in the Senate that would work with the president to fund the wall adequately, meet his priorities if he would do other things. So, Mr. President, if Democrats come to you in the Senate and say that we would like to work with you for a few weeks to see if we can solve this problem, give them a chance, and if they don't deliver, do it by yourself.
Do you think that, are you convinced that those Democrats exist in the Senate?
Yeah, well, they got to come out of the shadows and say, we're willing to work with you, Mr. President, to meet your priorities, and we want some things too, but we reject Nancy Pelosi's idea that you only get $1 for the wall. If there are Democrats willing to come forward to work with you, Mr. President, for a few weeks to see if we can solve this, take them up on it, and if you don't get the
and you think
results
that'll happen? So you're going to have, what, 5 of 10 Republicans, 5, 10 Democrats that say, give us a chance to do our job, open the government, and then if we don't get it done in 3 weeks, you should declare the national emergency and use Pentagon funds or other resources.
Mr. President, if you're watching this show, I think there's some Democrats that would work with you that we could get a deal with in the Senate.
By the way, no amnesty is involved in this?
In my view, for $5 billion, you don't get a pathway to citizenship. Let's keep it simple. The Bridge Act, work permits, no citizenship. If Democrats in the Senate will work with you, give them a chance, a couple of weeks. If it doesn't work, do it yourself, but give it one last shot.
His first question is going to be $1 Nancy. Okay,
That's
maybe those
exactly
senators
right.
will work with you. I wouldn't doubt they're embarrassed by Nancy Pelosi
right,
and probably
right.
worried about her extremism. His
Right.
first question is be, well, what is Nancy going to say?
I'm dying to hear what they will say. Get them in a room and ask them that question, see where we go.
All right, Senator Graham, good to see you. When we come back, we have a live report from Honduras, where a new migrant caravan is forming as we speak in Central America. We'll also get reaction. Dan Bongino, Leslie Marshall, when we come back. Straight ahead. All right, joining us now live from Honduras with the very latest on the new migrant caravan is Fox News correspondent Steve Harrigan, who's there. Steve, here we go again.
Sean, here we go again, and the waves of caravans are getting closer and closer together. It's really about two caravans right now. The one that I'm on in the lead right here, this is going into Guatemala, and all the way down the street you can see the overflow from this shelter. You got people trying to huddle up and stay warm. It's about 60 degrees here. And you've got another caravan already forming in Tegucigalpa, so you've got one on the move and one forming. The numbers are getting larger quicker than the past caravan in October. The numbers doubled today, 2,000, up from 1,000 at the start of the day. So they're moving faster, too. They've gone about 150 miles today. They're going to go through Guatemala, through Mexico. The goal is to get to the United States. So far, they're having no trouble getting into Guatemala. Mexico could be another question. The president has promised to treat migrants humanely, but they may be wearing out their welcome in some parts of Mexico. In Tijuana, they've just shut down a major shelter that used to house thousands of migrants. People there are simply fed up, and they're shutting one down, a shelter, with another wave of convoys on the way to Mexico. Back to you, Sean.
All right, Steve Harrigan in Honduras tonight. Thank you. And with more reaction, Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, former Secret Service agent, host of the Dan Bongino Show podcast, our friend Dan Bongino. Let's start with you. Okay, I had on Friday night Angel Moms and Dads.
Yes, I actually saw it. I was watching.
4,000 homicides, illegal immigrants. We have 10,000 sexual assaults, 100,000 violent assaults. 90% of heroin, we have an opioid epidemic, as you know, comes from the southern border. I know the Democratic talking point, the press talking point, this is a manufactured crisis. You heard from those moms and dads. Is that manufactured, or is that real life and death?
No, that's real life and death, certainly. Nobody should have to bury a family member to violent crime, whether a person came here illegally or whether they were born here legally. With regard to all of those numbers, let's talk about drugs. El Chapo himself has said, after, 2 months in a Brooklyn court, we brought the drugs in. We didn't use those border points. In the past 30 days, 3 separate tunnels were found, one under an Arizona parking lot into Mexico, 2 others in Nogales. And then in addition, 790 kilos found in Pennsylvania, biggest drug haul ever. Majority of illegal immigrants come to this country by plane and overstay their visas. So do we have a crisis? Yes, but the majority of Americans don't want a wall. They want solutions that work.
And I was at the border with the president last Thursday, and those drugs are coming in. Shockingly, Dan Bongino, Leslie, is a liberal that agrees that it's a crisis. It's life and death. The reality is it protects both sides. The people that won't make this treacherous journey, where some people die and on such an arduous task, some people are sexually assaulted. And it would be good for both sides in the end. And then we have legal immigration.
Right. Yeah, Sean, and listen, you're right. This does protect both sides. Our immigration laws are absurd. We have this Flores consent decree, Sean, which is incentivizing families to make this dangerous trek across our border and across Central America with children, with young children who clearly can't handle this. This is dangerous to everybody involved. But if I can quickly address, with due respect to Leslie, her talking point there, it's a little bit ridiculous. So you're suggesting because drugs come in via ports of entry, airplanes, and probably our northern border too, that we should somehow ignore the southern border and the wall? I mean, that's like saying, you know, listen, we have a drug problem in the neighborhood, so let's ignore the burglaries too. This is just a really ridiculous, outrageous liberal talking point that makes absolutely no sense. If we can put up a physical barrier and stop some portion of the drug flow, then we should, and we can handle the ports of entry problem with a ports of entry solution.
Well, Don, the problem is that I know that when we liberals speak, you can't hear us, but I want you to hear me. I'm not saying we don't. No, we're not saying we don't have a solution and we don't, you know, do something. Yes, but my point is, if you have drugs coming, as you mentioned, from the northern border, because we have 4 borders, and if you have drugs coming through ports of entry, whether it be Pennsylvania or the LA docks, the LA ports in California on the West Coast, if you have tunnels underground, the wall doesn't stop that. What Democrats are saying, with the majority of Americans, 63%, which, by the way, over 30% are Republicans in that latest poll, they want not just a safe border. They want smart decisions. And a wall doesn't, and a drone doesn't cover, even in conjunction, all of the areas I just mentioned.
Why did Democrats support $50 billion just in 2013? Why were they making the case and sounding like Donald Trump just 4 years ago?
Majority of Democrats did not, and I know Nancy Pelosi did. But remember, at one time...
Schumer, Hillary, Obama, Biden.
Correct. And when you go back to when Bush was president, the Secure the Border Act, who was one person that voted no, and that was Nancy Pelosi. As a Democrat, I disagree with the Democrats saying, hey, we'll give you money for a wall.
Let's give the last word to Dan.
Yeah. Leslie, you just debated yourself.
No,
you just said walls don't stop. Yeah, you did. You just made the same point in the same sentence that walls won't stop it, and yet they had a tunnel underneath the wall to get around the wall that initially stopped it. Clearly, it was a deterrent, and then they found the tunnel. I mean, you just debated yourself. You made our point, not yours. I don't know if you understand that.
We have tunnels in places where there absolutely zero fencing.
So they have to get around the obstructions. What you're saying, correct? So what you're saying is they have to get around the obstruction by tunnel building devices.
No, what I'm saying is exactly what Democrats have been saying with Republicans. We want we want some extension and some expansion. We don't want what the president campaigned on to fulfill his campaign promise.
And that criminals have to find a way around them because they were obstructed from getting in the country. You just made our point.
Well, you know what? You made mine if you're saying that criminals have to find their way around it or over it or under it, because they will, which would mean the wall may not be immoral, but it's ineffective.
That's not what your friends were saying 4 years ago. They supported the wall and sounded just like Donald Trump.
Not all of my friends.
Most of them, and they voted to allocate the money, but they didn't.
And many Democrats like myself were not in agreement with that vote.
All right, thank you both. When we come back, Hannity Watch on the hate Trump media. You won't believe what they said this time. Joe Concha, well, he's filling in for Jesse Waters, taking on Jessica Tarlov. We'll see whose world it is tonight. Straight ahead. All right, tonight, our Hannity Watch on the hate Trump media. Newsbusters out with a report showing, no surprise, broadcast network, evening newscast. They trashed Trump for the year 2018, 90% of their coverage. And in a major blow for the radical left, the DNC will no longer sponsor the Women's March after allegations of anti-Semitism. Here now, well, it might become his world because Jesse didn't show up. We have Joe Concha, the official media reporter of the Hannity program, and Jessica Tarlov is with us, Fox News contributor.
Something?
Well, it's going to be somebody's world, and I'm betting on Concha holding the line.
No, I'm going universe. World is small, universe galaxies.
How is it possible that we're going to impeach this MF for hanging out with the most radical people? Democrats, Ari Fleischer last night made a good point, filmed with Farrakhan. Nobody says a word. Why?
Double standards, mostly, right? And I think after a while, people are getting fatigued by the news, Sean, believe it or not. Pew Research does a great study last year, found that 70% of Americans are worn out by the news, including 79% of Republicans. And then you look at Axios and SurveyMonkey, another poll. 65% say fake news is usually reported because people have an agenda in the media, while only 3% think it's because they made a mistake. Think of these numbers for a second, right? They're fatigued, they're worn out, and the news that they're seeing, 90% negative. After a while, it's going to have no impact because it's the same thing every day over and over again.
It's every second, minute, hour, print, broadcast, cable, except for this show.
Okay, so...
And we're letting you on, which is a... exception.
A gift to your viewers. So conservative media does a good job as well of propping up the people that they support. I want to add about Rashida Tlaib, who did say in that private event, F that MF,
that was a public
that
event.
she got 5 times more coverage than Steve King's racist comments. Now he's finally in trouble. If you look at someone like Mitt Romney, who I know you're not a massive
fan of. She hung out
of,
with a radical anti-Semite. Radical.
You're talking about news
Other
coverage.
Democrats have hung out with Farrakhan. Answer that question.
I have been very clear about my feelings about Farrakhan. I was on here talking about
when are they going to get their rebuke assignments? When are they going to get their assignments taken away?
The committee members that have associated with him? I don't know, but look at what happened with the DNC today, dropping the Women's March. Again, 5 times the negative coverage for Rashida Tlaib than for Steve King with his overtly racist comments. Defend.
Farrakhan, for some reason, put up a tweet not too long ago comparing Jews to termites. And Twitter is worthless at this point because that tweet somehow is still up. His account is not suspended. That's what I mean about double standards. Louis Farrakhan, any conservative puts up anything remotely like that, and they're off the platform. You know why I know that? Because we've seen it over the last couple of months.
I am not in any way, shape, or form defending Louis Farrakhan. I never have. I even said to you in the green room, I don't understand the Louis Farrakhan thing. He doesn't stand for the same values as the Democratic Party, and he has no place in our politics. Why do so many Democrats hang out
with him and defend him?
Listen,
get pictures with him.
I'm not
including
kidding.
Obama. That they hid for 8 years.
That wasn't the picture of
President
Obama
was hidden
with
for
him.
8 years to hide from the American people.
I'm really sorry. Louis Farrakhan is not a Democrat representative. Steve King is a Republican representative.
So wait a minute. So Obama hung out with unrepentant terrorists, Ayers and Dorn, went to the Church of GD America for 20 years.
And David Duke loves Donald Trump.
I'm asking you about. It's not quid pro quo here. It's president of the United States started his career in the home of unrepentant domestic terrorists.
Is President Obama a domestic terrorist? No.
No.
Absolutely not.
But if a Republican did it, Joe,
a Democrat?
Make the point.
Things would be different, certainly.
Steve King has been doing this with his 8th term in Congress. That is the point.
Why would it be different in terms of?
If it was a Republican.
If it were a Republican?
Yeah.
Because
it's a silly question. You're
most of the national media is based in New York and Washington. And when you live in this environment, you're going to end up thinking the same way that a lot of other people do because it's a hive mentality, and you're not going to get a gold star.
I got to let you go.
Impossible.
Conscious world.
5 times the negative.
Coming up, CNN fake news analyst gets utterly embarrassed after playing the race card. Where do you see this next? All right, CNN fake news legal analyst Areva Martin had a harsh reality check earlier today. She appeared on Fox News.